title of the talk, of course. Basically, I had this idea of like having this talk. It's gonna be, I hope it's gonna be quite fun. I have basically one aim for this talk is basically that well, you have fun first of all, and that you take at least two things really helpful for you to say, and that you feel proud and yes. I'm from London. Let's get this thing started. So today we're going to talk about three things. The first one is creativity, the second one is icon design, and the third one is tools. So creativity, I think, is very important, and I'd like actually to know how many designers are in the audience. That's good. How many developers? Good. Very good. So I wanted to make this talk a bit like neutral, so everyone can basically enjoy it, even if you're, this is obviously more design centric, but I think pretty much the same things I'm talking about are going to apply to developers as well. If it works. Okay, blind. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is 36 days of life. Maybe some of you might know that. It's basically a challenge that goes on every year, and you have to design an icon or a letter a day for 36 days. And I took the challenge this year, and I designed all 36 letters or icons. And I really don't recommend it if you want to sleep, but otherwise it's really good. It's really good fun. This is basically, well, I like this girl. Excuse me, who are you? What being a designer really means. It's a very typical lady that you're gonna find at the interviews in London, I think. With that look. And I basically want to draw a line here, and I want to go and analyze the difference between like visual design and UX design. I think nowadays I think we have a bit of difference, but these two terms, these two worlds are quite similar, and I think there is a lot of confusion sometimes, like when you go to, I mean, some of you might have a job already, some of you might be at the university and looking for a job, or maybe you are looking for another opportunity, and sometimes it's really daunting because you see like visual design, you can see people that use the term like web designer, graphic designer, UI designer, pixel ninja. Sometimes for UX design, you can find like UX guru, product designer, experience designer, information architect. It can be really confusing because, I mean, why do we use so many terms, right? I think, well, the main reason is that, especially like this varies from different markets, right? For example, London is very specific on that. They search for a very specific profile, so they put like, I don't know, graphic designer or like UI designer, but ultimately, this talk is called We Make Things, We Are Designers, because at the core, I think, if you can design one thing, you can design everything. And obviously, you will need to learn these different skills, have a kind of like flexible mindset. But I think these two worlds that are really, really, really connected. And some people think, oh, you know what, I'm a UI designer, I'm doing visual, I don't want to be involved in UX, or I'm doing UX, I actually don't understand visual. But I think this is kind of like of a box that people have. And even like recruiters or like employers, they put they put us into a box and they say, oh, okay, you are a designer, so you can do visual, right? That's it. But I think mainly now, many companies they are adopting the term product designer, which involves basically the visual and the UX all together. So I wouldn't be worried or I wouldn't be frightened by these two different worlds. Of course, you're going to be drawn to one of those two different profiles. Maybe you feel like stronger in visual design and that's what you want to do. Or maybe you feel like stronger in UX and you want to do UX. That's totally fine. But what I'm telling you is that I wouldn't feel worried if you want to jump the fence and do a bit of that visual if you're doing UX. And ultimately, if you're doing UX design, you should know a little bit about visual. And if you do visual, you should know a little bit about UX, because these two things are really connected. And the next step is junior versus senior. And you can see that the guy is junior, right? He's all enthusiastic, and the other guy is like senior designer. He's miserable, like, God. I need to do this every single day. That's a joke. But again, this is another difference, which is quite interesting because, of course, we need like separation between junior and senior. When you are out of the university, you can't really be expected to be a senior designer, but sometimes people are like held back by the box that other people give them. So you might be junior designer for generally like 3 to 4 years, and then when is that time that you start to feel like senior? You might go through that phase in which you are a middleweight designer, and then you jump into senior, and that's fine. So we can potentially have like actually 3 phases. But I think for me there is one simple rule of thumb, and is that when you have a backup plan, so I'm talking about like the night before your project is seriously messed up, and the day after you need to deliver, and if you have a backup plan that night, it means that you are a senior designer. That's the rule of thumb. I think when you go into your career, there is a point in time in which you will feel that you can actually take on more responsibility, and that's cool. And that's probably when you have to make the jump to a senior role. But I wouldn't be like too worried when you read a job description. For example, they're looking for a senior designer. Some people, they don't even apply, or they go, oh, I can't really do that. But sometimes it's just, you basically need to take on a little bit more responsibility, and that's the only thing that it takes. Ultimately, I think it's something that you will feel in yourself. So you will feel, okay, yes, so I feel, I can take this on and pursue it. And that's another interesting slide, I think. It links back to what we just said. I think ultimately, if you're a designer, and by chance, I think developers are designers as well, because if you look in the dictionary, actually, the designer designing something is not just how things are looking, but it's also how things are working. So it's basically building something from scratch, right? And I like this one. I like this phrase, like disruptor, because I think every designer is a disruptor, and because you wake up in the morning and you create something, and this is really cool. And people sometimes don't realize that, but when you wake up and you have to do a logo design, or you have to do a website, or you have to do a contact form. You go to the office, if you're freelancing, you work from home, I don't know, you start in the morning, right? And there is no logo, and there is no website, and there is no contact form. And maybe at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. that day, your contact form, your logo, or your website is done. So you basically, you broke something into yourself, right? You create something from nothing to something, which I think is really, really good. And it's something that not many people realize. And I think also the term disruptors can be associated with the one with the innovators, and I think this is really connected because generally when you are a maker, when you are a designer, and you disrupt something, you also innovate. Obviously, not every innovator is a disruptor, so and vice versa. But I think the two terms are really connected. And this take us to icon design today, which I think is one of the hottest topics these days. Because if you look around, if you look at the web, if you look at the phone, icons are rocking our world big time. They have been there obviously for ages, mainly because icon design is one design sector, one design area which is really interesting to explore, but can be extremely challenging because you have to design something and you might need to decide which element to highlight, which element to draw, and we're going from a phase in which icon design was super bold, the exact term is skeuomorphic, so you could see like all the details in an icon. We went from there to a very flat approach with the material design, and I think that's, that obviously is a natural evolution of the design. But we're also going towards a world that has more words. And I know this sounds a little bit extreme, but if you think about how many times you communicate something with just with an icon, right? It can be like, I don't know, the face, which screams, or like the cat with the heart. And you don't use any word, right? So you just with an icon, you basically you can communicate something, and that going towards the future is going to be more and more used, and I think it's really cool. So I would say that in the future we probably will see more icons than words. And that's true, not only on your phone, not only on the web, but also in logos. I remember one, I think it was a few years ago, that Starbucks decided to remove the word Starbucks from the logo. And now, if you know the Starbucks logo, there is just basically the girl in the green rounded shape. So as you can see, like people are getting more educated and they can actually perceive things better, and that's where we're going basically. And this also is quite interesting. I don't know how many of you have heard about the desktop metaphor. Probably like many of you, maybe some of you might not know what exactly is, but this goes back to the 80s, I think. And the strap line is once upon a time skeuomorphism, because as I was saying before, the desktop metaphor is basically when the first computer were created with I would say with a graphic user interface, that it wasn't even called like UI, it was called GUI, graphic user interface. They had basically the desktop was a replica, an imitation of the real world. So that's why we have the trash can. That's why we have the notepad. I don't know, that's why we have lots of icons that are actually linked to the real world. And that was cool. And I think it's still cool. We're still in that transition era, I would say, nowadays. But we're moving away from it because people actually understand now that if you want to trash something, you go to the trash can. But potentially that icon could change in the future because we're not as much tied to that vision anymore. And that's why before we used to have like all these 3D icons, really like rich, a lot of lighting. But nowadays we actually don't need those anymore. That's why we have like a refresh on Android. All the icons got flatter. iOS has done the same. So I think this metaphor is still going because we still have some of the elements of they're quite curated, quite 3D, but we are slowly moving on. And then I got a couple of tools, and this is basically myself when I open Photoshop. Tools is an interesting one because I think, especially like, it depends where you're coming from, right? You might be doing UI, you might be doing web design and graphic design, and there are like different tools and different options, and I think Photoshop is obviously one of them. I don't necessarily think it's the best one for everything. I think pretty much you have to choose your own tool and where you feel confident. I just want to know right now how many like Photoshop users are here in the room. You know, how many Sketch users? Cool. Illustrator? Fireworks? 2. 4. But like affinity designer. So as you can see, I think for example, like for UI, Sketch is great, right? For UI design, I think it's great. Choosing your tool, I think it's good that Photoshop has a big market share. It is a great tool, but ultimately it was created for photography purposes. And to design a UI in Photoshop can be really challenging. I think knowing Photoshop, I would say, is really, really important because many agencies are actually requiring that tool. But I think I'm not saying necessarily it's the best one to do a great UI. And ultimately, I'm saying that the tool doesn't really matter to me that much. What it matters is the idea and the final output. So you can achieve like amazing results with Affinity, Sketch, Illustrator. I think maybe Illustrator for UI can be a bit tricky. It's not really designed for that, but I think that's where we are. And I think these guys, they choose the right tool, man, because at the end of the day, I think you need to follow your gut instinct, and everyone else can wait. If you guys are confident in one tool where you think, oh yeah, I'm loving Sketch, and I want to design these websites in Sketch, I think as long as the tool is persistent with what you're doing, I don't think you need to be like put down by anyone, right? Because I'm speaking using my personal career. I think many times I had like issues with people that I used to use like Fireworks a lot, and then obviously now it's gone, and I jumped to Photoshop and sometimes Sketch. But I really love illustrators, and but I think sometimes they put you in that box, and they put you a bar there, and they say, oh, you know what, you need to use this tool. I think at the end of the day, if you do your work well, that tool shouldn't really matter that much. Obviously, it's good to double check with your employer or your client, obviously if he wants like the final file in PSD, that's probably Photoshop's the right choice. I want to show you this video, and then that I think is really inspiring. The audio is going to work. That's pretty important.
We're a small design team. We've worked together for 20, 25 years. One of the things that we've learned is the importance of listening, because as we all know, the very best ideas can very often come from the quietest voice. Ideas are extremely fragile. Ideas are unpredictable in terms of when you'll have them and how many you're going to have. And so over the years, we've really created a team and an environment that I think really increases the probability of good ideas, and when they actually arrive, I think nurtures them. The design studio really is a workshop. We design three-dimensional objects, and we make lots and lots of models and prototypes. Designing and making really should be inseparable. For every finished product that you see, tools had to be designed, process had to be created and experimented with. We've worked very hard to create a singular studio that has all of these different facets. The hallmark of the group has been to be inquisitive and ask an awful lot of questions. We have really made it a practice to just have our heads down and work, and ignore, in some senses, all the reasons why something shouldn't be possible. This book captures a point in time of incredible transitions and quite shocking change. You understand the nature of an object so much more when you understand how it came to be. The book tells dozens and dozens of stories. You see momentum, you see learning. Of course, as designers, you live in the future. It's not that we are not interested in the work we've done before, it's just we are so consumed by what we haven't done yet.
So I showed this video not because of Johnny Ivy and what he says, and what we can agree or disagree. But I think there are 5 things in this video which are like amazing. And I think they're amazing for me, and they're amazing for any designer. If you want to take a picture of this slide, do it, because I think it's really good. The importance of listening, because ideas, he said something really, really good. He says, ideas sometimes comes from the quietest voice. So you might talk to a friend that is not even a designer. He might tell you something, and that sparks in your mind. It's going to be, oh, yeah, I can actually create that, right? Second thing, heads down and work. And sometimes it's unfortunately the only answer, right? Because sometimes, you have ideas, but sometimes it's tricky to put them, or maybe they're going to come to life like years later. So the only thing you need to do is heads down and work. Third thing, this is like my favorite problem. Ideas are not predictable. So you might have 10 ideas today, and you might have 0 ideas tomorrow. That happens to me all the time. I have like months in which I can't recreate anything, which I think is good, and I have months in which I have like 20 ideas a day. So bad months. Fourth, design is a point in time, and this is really important because it's going to link to the next slide. as a designer, you live in the future, and that's really good as well, because you always thinking forward. You generally hardly think, oh yeah, I did that work in Internet Explorer 6, that was amazing. You generally think like ahead. And that's a blessing, I think. But design is a point in time. So this is probably, I think, the most important slide of the presentation, and the importance of time, because tomorrow never comes, unfortunately. And I talk for myself mainly here, because I am the worst procrastinator ever. Like, every time I got an idea, I don't write it down. I had like, I don't know, 1,000 sketchbook, and I probably draw just on the first page, really bad organized. But it comes to this slide, which is very important, because you have an idea today, right? And the green is today. And it's opposite to the red, which is emergency. So you have an idea today, and if you do it today, you're on the green. You're good, right? But if you don't do it today, maybe you're gonna do it tomorrow. Maybe. Maybe you're gonna do it someday. And maybe the idea that you had today was so good, but if you don't do it, you go to this stage, which is the emergency, which basically means that it might never happen, or maybe the website that you deliver, and you think, oh, just like, I don't know, one-page website, or it's like one contact form, I can do it today, and then you start thinking, oh, I don't know, I'm so busy. If you don't do it today, you might end up in the emergency section, which is basically, it's going to be rushed. It's going to be really tough to deliver. Or if you're talking about ideas, that's actually, I think, even more important, because you might have a really, really good idea. You don't write it down, you're going to lose it. Because today is really the only important day. It's today. Tomorrow never comes. And that's a wrap in terms of food. I hope you guys enjoyed this, but I have a couple of slides now. They're quite interesting, because we are all, how can I say, very busy in, especially if you're designing, we're very busy in our kind of like world, and there is no time for anything. There is no time for that cool side project that you really want to do. So I actually forced myself to do something, and you can find some of my work on Instagram, Dribble, or Twitter. I mean, some stuff. But, the handle is Cocorino, something I created really long time ago. But I think that Instagram is probably the most updated one. And I'm going to show you this side project, which is stickers. And I think everyone loves stickers now. So I thought, I basically came up with this idea like ages ago of doing like a series of characters based on movies. So I'm really, I think, quite a lot of stuff I do takes inspiration from movies. So I really like, Deadpool. This is the dog from The Snatch. This is Everest, Spring, Gizmo from Gremlins. And I started designing these, and then I thought, I think this could be quite cool as a, if you fight doing stickers. And then, so I created this sticker part, which is your daily sticker dose for movie lovers. And I thought, well, that could be a good idea if actually people maybe they're gonna enjoy the talk, right? If the first three that they're gonna send maybe the feedback to info.cocorino.com, I'm gonna give them a sticker part. I think it'd be cool. So the first 3 emails, they're gonna give me like feedback with what they liked or they hated about the talk. They're gonna get a giveaway of a sticker pack of 10. And 50, be very nice. And the other side is this guy would be 84. He's basically, this guy is doing like a lot of, he's an engineer, I think, and he's doing a lot of like side projects. He works with wood, and I'm really like excited when I see like people that are doing side projects, but it means that your creativity is like so great that you basically, you go out from your workplace and you say, you know what, I'm going to do something else. Because I just want to create stuff. And that side project is actually really good because you might have no one directing you. You don't have your boss, you don't have, I don't know, your client, it's just you doing your own stuff in your free time. And I think that's great. And that, you can't, I mean, I think probably most of you, they have side project, which is great. How many do you? I'm sure you do. Yeah, quite a few people. So if you do side project, you will learn tons of stuff as well. Because you have like challenges that you don't face in your day work. How am I going to print that? I'm actually at web time, I don't know how to get that print. So you need to go on the web, look for it, search. But it's really, really good. Yeah, so I think we have about 15. Yes, good. Questions?
Okay. We have quite a lot of time for questions. Anyone wants to start? Yeah, okay.
Hey, thanks for the talk. What I think about designing a browser, because I'm talking from my context, which is web development, and our previous designer was using entirely only the browser, and just playing with the CSS and the markup. He was doing the design only using the browser.
So
as a tool. Yeah.
So it was designed just with the
browser. Yeah. So my question is, what do you think about the browser as a tool for designing websites?
Okay. Yeah. Good question. Well, in that case, I think if you, what kind of, what was his position? It was like designer or web developer? Because I think.
So he was mainly responsible for how the things looks like and for the branding of the company.
Okay.
But
I think in that case, I would say like the tools that I was referring to I think they're quite standard for web design or like graphic design, and like UX designers use Sketch, or even like there was a project a few years ago called Adobe Comet that transformed into Adobe XD, and it's going to be, it's taking off really well, I think. In that case, I would say that if you just define yourself as a guardian of the look and feel, or like visual designer, UI designer, I think you need to know at least a couple of software like Sketch or Illustrator. Designing with the browser and doing just CSS to me is more like front-end development rather than pure design. That's
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, next question, please. So you said, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Great presentation, by the way. So when you talk about designing in browser, something that comes in my mind is what's your opinion about Figma design?
Sorry?
The Figma tool, it's a design tool based on a web browser that's allowed to several people to work in an infinite artboard, and it's kind of really different approach into design. So what's your opinion, and do you find it handy to use some web?
Is it web-based?
Yeah, it's fully web-based, and yeah.
Cool. No, it's a great question. I think we had a look in web-based software with one of my friends here, Michelle, he worked really hard on Gravit. And Gravit is something I think similar. It basically took part of the features of Fireworks, and the team created a web-based graphic design tool. You could basically do collaboration as well. I think it's totally valid for me. I think the only thing is that you might come to some limitation with that kind of software. If you're doing just web design, you might be okay, right? Because I think if you're doing UI design and your software is web-based, and you can export your file as PNG, JPEG, GIF, I think you can use open source. In fact, I don't see any issues with that. The only issue I can see is when the tool becomes limiting for your creativity, and when it becomes limiting for your creativity, and myself included, you start to do hacks. So not to change the tool. I can do it in this way. And you know in yourself that actually you're doing that because the tool doesn't let you do that. So I think when you arrive at that point, you need to decide if you want the tool basically controlling you, or you want to control the tool. So I think the answer for me would be you can control the tool, and maybe if it doesn't give you a good spectrum of possibilities, maybe you can do a few things. Reach out to the tool, and that's something that people don't think about, but many developers can be independent. If you can reach them out and say, hey, I really like your tool, it's fantastic, I use it every day. Would you think develop this feature, or there is a plugin online that could help me out? I think that's great. For example, Sketch, when they started, and I think they started pretty small, but so many people found Sketch a very good replacement for even like more expensive options like Photoshop, and tons of people started to write a plugin for it. And then when you have this kind of approach, you have many designers that share the files, and developers that they share the plugins, and the community starts building up, which is really good. And then you have like plugins for, I don't know, exporting 2x, 3x for like Retina, or even upwards, and that's great. And that is, I think, the first option would be reach out to developing. The second option is maybe looking into some other tools. So if you think like that tool is limited a little bit, you can maybe I would say like going on websites like Drupal, for example, or Behance sometimes can help you to see what other designers are using, because there are like tons of designers that they use, I would say, like software that are not maybe from like big corporations. They use it because, well, maybe sometimes it's cheaper, right? And or maybe they always use that software, and they're fine with it. So it can help you out to see, maybe you're using Sketch, or how you find it. It's like it's very simple. Can you you can do a lot of things with it, and it gives you enough flexibility. But on top, I would say it's not a tool like to explore web-based software.
I have a question for you. So you say designers live in the future, and we already saw what the future looks like. So it's accessibility, it's virtual reality, augmented reality, and it's holographic. So how do we design the future?
That's very good. Very good question. I think and this is something that I've been thinking a lot lately. If you are actually a designer, I would say like visual designer, but even like UX designer, I think right now you are in a really good position because design everywhere is really, really hot. Everyone likes design, and design is very well known for problem solving. So I think when I think about design, I don't think about like beautiful things. I think about I have an issue, I go to a designer, and the problem is solved. So I think whatever medium comes around, so it can be VR, it can be AR, it can be complex UI for finance, it can be complex UI for cars. If you have the mindset, you can apply your mindset to any kind of interface. So I know you're saying that we know the future already. I think I agree 50% with it because things can change really, really quickly, especially like in this kind of technology. I mean, the example is I think Google Glasses. Were like they were looking at the future like 6-7 years ago, but they never shipped. So I'm not too sure about that. Having said that, I think if you apply what you learned, even like doing interface for web, or even doing interface for phone, and you apply those patterns to other, I would say medium, and it can be AR or like future interfaces that are not even out yet. I think you're gonna be good.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one last question.
So in your presentation, there was a big emphasis on icons, and obviously you went through different trends like schemorphism, flat icons, outlined icons. So my question is, how to design an icon that can last for longer and that can stand against the trial of time?
That's very good. I like that. It's very tricky because I would apply the same logic that I generally use for like logo designs. If you can design like, there are logos that have been designed like 30 years ago and they're still relevant today. And I mean, you guys know like some of the logos, I'm talking about like this like Nike, classic, FedEx, still really relevant. I think everything, there is a trend around. Now it's flat design, before it was like skeuomorphism. I think you need to keep yourself very aware that is a trend. So you don't need to do everything that the trend tells you, basically. If you think like, and I encourage actually you to design your own icon if you have a project. Well, first of all, because it's fun. Second, because it's a really good exercise. And third is because you can find that simplicity, and you can say, oh, I think this icon could work like in 5 years' time, because it's not actually related to any trend, but it has like a classic approach, a classical design approach, as I would do for a logo. But I wouldn't like go, I don't know, and search for like trendy logos on the web and try like to find this inspiration there. But I would, if you look, for example, Susan Karen was an icon designer at Apple. The icon that she designed for the Mac, like we're talking 25 years ago, if you basically tweak them slightly, maybe because they were done in pixel, they would be still relevant today, because the ideas that was behind the icon, it was so strong, and the execution was so strong. So simple lines, simple approach is still relevant today. So I would keep like simplicity in mind and be very aware that you are so surrounded by trends. but you need to be aware that these are trends. And if you want to do something that can last long, and maybe have like a couple of tweaks here and there in a few years, if you keep your simplicity and be aware of the trends, you're gonna be fine.
Thank you very much.